All right, welcome everyone. So it is 1 p.m. We'll be launching our webinar in a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for more people to join. So please stand by for a few more minutes. Thank you.
Yes, and you can continue hearing about my World Cup recap.
Thank you.
I think either Chris or Majid was about to ask me who I'm actually rooting for.
I was going to say, who are you rooting for? Because you're throwing out some compliments to all the teams, but I know there might be a favorite somewhere.
It's so difficult this year because there's the like the traditional favorite. I've been a fan of France since I was a kid, since Michel Platini, for any of us that are very, very old and remember the 80s. But they won the last time, right? They won in 2018, and it was great and everything, and they have a lot of talent that will return again. There are, however, a few notable people that will likely not be returning to the World Cup in 2026 and have had long and illustrious careers. So the absolute dream scenario is Argentina versus Portugal in the final, and the brackets do allow it to happen. But is it going to be Messi or Ronaldo that actually wins the ultimate prize? I can't decide in my head. Like I would be extremely happy and extremely sad at the same time. But there's always England since 1966. They want to win the World Cup. They think they're going to win the World Cup, and then it always becomes heartbreaking. So hopefully, they get somewhere. If they were to win, that would still be great.
So I think we're gonna start. I love your enthusiasm about winter and soccer. We have some people actually in the chat who are cheering for England, so good to know. But let's get down to business. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We have a pretty good panel of panelists. Today we have Alexandre Laflamme, who's a Microsoft Partner Manager. Microsoft Partner Program and Incentives Manager and an avid soccer fan. We have Rasha Jafar, Product Sales Manager for Azure. From Microsoft, we have Majid Ali, Department Investment Lead. And we have Chris Alfar, Azure Channel Manager for SMB and SMC Scale, also from Microsoft, joining us today. So we have a very good session for you today. We hope it's going to be interactive. Feel free to type your question in the chat throughout the presentation. We do have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, but feel free to submit your question in the chat, and we'll pause the webinar to try to answer your question. Just a quick reminder that the session is recorded, so at the end of the presentation, you will be able to get the deck and a copy of the recording sent to you by email. And one last piece of information I'd like to share with you is at the end of the presentation, we will have 8 vouchers for AZ305 course that will be able to give away. So at the end of the presentation, if you're interested, simply type it in the chat. I'll take down your name, and I'll share the 50% off voucher with you. If we have too many names, then we'll simply do a giveaway or a draw and notify the winners by email. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump to the agenda, and then I'll pass the mic to our first presenter. So on the agenda today, we have who is Sherweb, for those who are new to Sherweb. We're going to cover the Microsoft Commerce incentives for fiscal year 23. We'll present the solutions designation for infrastructure, and then Microsoft will present the additional programs available to our partners for fiscal year 23, followed by a short Q&A session. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Rasha.
Thank you, Roman. Hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, because as we've promised you, we're going to do this before we're doing it. We're telling you about the incentives, the new requirements for the new partner program at Microsoft, and how you can take advantage of the infrastructure and other Azure designations and the back-end incentives with Sherweb. So if you still don't know who is Sherweb, can you please go to the next slide, Roman? This is us. So as you see, we are your all-in-one cloud marketplace. We have an ever-expanding portfolio of innovative products that we've handpicked and pre-vetted for you, our dear partners. And as the leading cloud solution provider that we are actually being for all of our resellers, we work hand in hand with you to help you grow your managed service offering. We partner with many vendors, but on top of that, we bring you lots of services that are developed by us. We service over 7,000 resellers. We maintain a high level of customer service with them. You are our top priority, and we give you lots of areas to develop. But on top of all of that, we give you also help with business strategy, with different cloud services. We have our own hosted solutions that will help you uh, that will help you complete your portfolio with comprehensive products and services and solutions for your end users. But most of all, we give you fewer headaches with more focus with our personalized help desk services, with our dedicated account managers and access to pre-sales experts and also post-sales with our professional services. And just like I explained, the subject of our webinar today is the Microsoft Partner Program with my dear Alex, who is going to give you an overview about how to achieve the different requirements and how to take advantage of these back incentives. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us through this webinar, even after the webinar through our account managers, and we'll be more than happy to help. And without further delays, I'm going to go back to Roman. Thank you so much. And I do hope that you do enjoy our webinar today. Alex, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha. Well done. It's a good intro to what Sherweb is, and thank you again, everyone, for joining. One thing that's going to be really fun for me on this webinar is that I am not explaining the most complicated part. We've actually left that to our good friends at Microsoft that will follow up on the next part after I'm done with this. So last week, I believe, or the week before that, we talked about all the different incentives for Microsoft 365 and Dynamics 365 for the new fiscal year that started on October 1st. So this time around, we want to dedicate this to the Azure incentives. We thought it was going to be important because this year there are a lot of new programs and a lot of existing programs that are expanded. So we thought it would be worth it to have its own special session on this. So if you want to move to the next slide. The first program which is returning is the same main program which used to be the only incentive program for Azure, which is now called, it's an engagement as part of the Microsoft Commerce Incentives. So whenever you get an email from Microsoft talking about MCI engagements and things like that, it's talking about the incentive programs. This first one here, we first start on the left side to see what is the partner eligibility. And we do see that other than the standard authorization and agreements that you have to sign, you will be required to have either the infrastructure under Solutions Partner Program or an active gold or silver competency on the cloud platform. As you may know, the gold and silver competencies are no longer available to attain, but anyone that had them before the change in October will be grandfathered in for this type of program for this year. This is the final year that it will be available to have the old competencies accepted for incentive purposes. As of October of next year, it will only be the infrastructure solution designation that will be accepted. So as you can see, there's no real change from last year as far as the core rates are concerned. So 4% for the CSP and direct reseller program. So anyone that is in CSP reselling Azure and qualifies should get 4% of their Azure consumption revenue back from Microsoft directly. There is the same 10% for reserved instances. And new as of this year, there is a workload accelerator. So if you want to move to the next slide, I've put it as insights. Yep. So no change in the core rates. We have a new workload accelerator, and what that means is pretty much any new service that you add to an existing deployment will qualify as a workload accelerator. So that's an extra 2% that you can get. Solutions Partner for infrastructure is the only designation accepted because there are 3 designations that are related to Azure, digital and app innovation and data and AI. But for the incentives portion, it really has to be infrastructure the solution designation that you have to be able to be eligible for these incentives. Last year, that legacy silver and gold in cloud platform, which is not the same thing as being a legacy silver or gold partner. You really have to have the cloud platform competency. And since the competency menu has been retired from the partner center, the only way to check if you did qualify for it that I know of, if you know of any other ways, please put those in the chat. It would be to go under your benefits for Azure and cloud, and then you would be able to see the legacy benefits that you received. And in this case, it would be the $6,000 or $12,000 Azure bulk credit from the cloud platform competency that you would have had before. So that's one way you can confirm that you have access to these incentives for this year. The $75,000 cap that you've seen on the slide is really at the subscription level. So it's not a $75,000 cap for the whole program. It really is per subscription. So a customer could have multiple subscriptions, and then you would be able to earn those incentives on each separate subscription up to that cap. The one part that may have come as a surprise to some of you is the fact that co-op funds are now applicable to the Microsoft Commerce Incentives program. You should have received a notification from Microsoft on November 15th around that you must go into the Partner Center and update your payment and tax profile. If you haven't done so, please do so, because it will you will not lose the incentives, but it will hold up the payments until you update that information. Can move to the next slide. I hope I'm not talking too fast.
So Alex, I'm just going to take 30 seconds to tell our attendees. This is a lot of information, so while you're processing it, if you have any questions, again, I repeat, don't hesitate. Please type them in the chat. If you rather wait until the end of the presentation, we will have a QA session where you can ask your questions. And on top of that, as also previously mentioned, you will get a copy of this recording along with the decks. You can take some time and review the slides at your own pace.
Yeah, over the holidays, with a nice cup of eggnog by the fireplace, you can rewatch this webinar and absorb that information at your own pace. Thank you, Roman. So speaking of Solutions Partner for Infrastructure, if this is the first time that you have heard of the Solutions Partner designations from Microsoft, please do check out our YouTube channel or our Knowledge Network from the Sherweb website. We did have some webinars dedicated to tell you about these changes and how to get into this program. But specifically today, we're going to talk about the one for infrastructure. So if you want to move to the next slide. As a whole, like I just mentioned, it is a whole revamp of the Microsoft Partner Program. Silver and gold are no longer the competencies are no longer in play. It's now the solutions designation. It is a simpler program. We were up to 20 different competencies, some of them with 3-4 different options, both at the silver and gold level under the old program. So it was pretty much, as many stars as there are in the sky as ways to become a silver or gold partner with Microsoft. Now it's down to 6 solutions designations. So it's much simpler. And the way they measure them, it really is a 360-degree approach or a holistic measurement that they like to use. So instead of just having some very cryptic requirements, they've really standardized the whole process. So if you want to move to the next slide. All of the different solutions designations work the same way. You have to attain at least 70 points out of the available 100 points maximum that you can get, and it's separated into 3 super categories: performance, skilling, and customer success. And now when we're talking about the infrastructure solutions designation, how does it translate to that one? If you want to move to the next slide. It is under the performance tab, 30 points that you can earn for adding new customers. Under the certification, the skillings, it's 40 points that you can earn maximum, and then customer success, 30 points. So there's really 2 big ways that you can approach this. Either a very certification focus practice would be able to earn pretty much half the points, even more than half the points required just in exams to reach the solutions designation. Or if you have a lot of volume and you want to, earn the maximum points on the on those metrics, you can get 60 points with the first and the third category. So you would only have to get 12 points total for the scaling section. So what I've been doing with a lot of partners over the last couple of months is to establish their own specific roadmap on how to get to the solutions designation by October of next year, because that's when it's going to be coming into full force. But for this webinar, I thought we'd go into details as to what those three categories actually mean. So if you want to move to the next slide. For the performance section, what does that actually mean to have net customer add on the infrastructure solution designation? So it really is based on a trailing 12-month scope. So they do look at all the customers that were linked to you in one way or another from 12 months ago all the way up to today. And then any customer that would have reached $1,000 of Azure Consume revenue for the first time in the last 12 months for at least 2 months consecutively will earn you a net customer add. If a customer drops below that amount for 2 consecutive months, you will get negative points for a customer add. So as long as your existing customers are keeping a steady rate and you have at least 1 or 2 customers that pass that $1,000 threshold for the first time in 12 months, you will be able to get the points by getting just 1 net customer add. It's going to be 10 points. So 3 customers that reach the $1,000 threshold for the first time in 12 months over the course of a year is what is required to get the maximum points out of this. But as we've just discussed, it is 70 points out of 100. So it's really important to get at least one of them, but the 3 of them is going to depend on, what kind of market you're in, what kind of customers you're serving, and all of that. So try to get at least 1 to be able to get this requirement, but 3 obviously is ideal. So now to the next slide. When we're talking about scaling, and this is what Roman mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, that we are going to offer some vouchers for some of the exams that are required for this. And in this specific case, it is the Azure Solution Architect Expert certifications, which requires the AZ 305. That's the discount, the voucher that we have available for you. It's part of the prerequisites for the advanced certifications on the infrastructure solution designations that we want to offer you. So if getting cashback on Azure is something of interest for you, you should be interested in getting those certifications. So there's the intermediate and advanced certification side. There is that prerequisite to have 2 Azure Admin Associate on the intermediate and then Azure Solution Architect Expert on the advanced. If you combine both of those together, it really is 2 people that have the AZ104 and the AZ305. That's the prerequisites. As soon as you've completed those prerequisites, anyone, including the people that have done the prerequisites, that take any of the 3 exams on the intermediate sections or the 2 exams in the advanced certifications will earn you points. One individual can only earn you points once on the intermediate side and once on the advanced side. So if you have, Johnny Network Engineer that decides to take all 3 intermediate exams, you will unfortunately only get 4 points for that. But 2 different people could be taking the same exam and get multiple points. So hopefully that makes some sense. We do have a little PDF guide specifically on the certification path for the Azure Solution designation available to partners, including instructions on how to link the Microsoft Learn profile of your employees to your partner center so you actually get credit for those exams. You can now move to the next slide as I take a sip of water.
So Alex, I'm just going to go back to the previous slide because we have a comment, and so not a question, but a comment in the chat. Someone is basically showing concern that smaller shops are going to be excluded due to the lack of certified professionals, even though they could have the client base with no negative reports. Can we address this concern?
Well, it is a big shift. I'm not going to kind of sugarcoat it. It really is. If you were at the silver level, barely a silver partner under the old program, it's going to be quite a lift to get to the infrastructure solutions designation by October of next year. The important part is that you do have a lot of time to plan for this. So as long as you have 2 individuals in your company that are willing to take these exams, it's all that is required as far as personnel. As long as you're able to get some points from the consumption, from adding new customers or from your existing customers growing. If you have 2 people on staff that are willing to take these exams, you are going to be able to attain this solutions designation. But again, it is a lot more difficult than getting just silver in cloud platform in the old program. So we do realize, that it is a requirement. One thing that we have been talking about with the partners, with our MSP community, is that you can try to join forces, with a certain, if you are part of, say, a buying group of some kind or some other sort of association, you can try to see if all of you together would be better to have an association on the Microsoft side, so that if there's one person with certification in this location and another one in this location there, well, that would meet the criteria for all of the program together. But it is something that if it is your goal that you really want to reach the infrastructure solution designation, I would invite you to contact your account manager so that we can set up a one-on-one consultation, so we can establish your specific path for you, which is going to be based on your specific business conditions, type of customers that you have, and what you want to achieve.
Thank you, Alex. So I'll just jump to the following slide.
Thank you. So the third category is customer success. When it comes to the deployments, it is pretty much as long as it is a tenant that is eligible, so a tenant that has over $1,000 of Azure consume revenue in a month, that adds an additional service except virtual machines and virtual machine licenses, you will get points for deployments on this. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but pretty much any type of Azure deployment that you have, anytime you would add an additional service, it would count as a deployment for points on that. And finally, you have the Azure consumption revenue growth year to year. So to get the maximum amount of points, it is a 20% growth year over year. And the calculation is the Azure consume revenue that you have today across all of your eligible tenants versus what it was 12 months ago, divided by the Azure consume revenue from 12 months ago times 100. So again, it's just to be able to get the maximum 20 points that they have the formula like that, but pretty much 1 percentage point is equal to 1 point. So that's it in a nutshell, I believe. I don't think I have another slide for this. And again, this was the simple part. So now for the more complex, more advanced programs. And again, you should think of it as not necessarily something, I'm sure that some of you will qualify for some of these programs right away, but for a lot of you, it will be more an aspirational goal to see. Once we get to the infrastructure solution designation, it'll be good to know that there's these additional programs that are coming. And we have our good friend from Microsoft, Chris, who's going to take over for this part.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Alex. So everybody, in case you missed the beginning, my name is Chris Alfar. I'm a Azure Channel Manager for our SMB space at Microsoft Canada. So as Alex mentioned, excited to get into these incentives and programs with you. A lot of them are going to rely on some of the things we were already talking about around skilling, around getting your Azure solution designations, but also advanced specializations. So keep in mind as you look through the slides, keep this as an aspirational goal, as here's where we want to get to as an Azure partner, and what's going to allow us to drive the most meaningful engagement and get the most value out of being an Azure Microsoft partner. So if we could just go to the next slide, I'll talk about incentives. Cool. So this is just a single slide. There's a lot of acronyms on this slide, so I'm not going to try to drain the whole thing. So it is complicated. We have Majid on the line if there's more advanced questions, but I'm going to try to cover just generally what the gist of how our incentive portfolio lines up from an Azure perspective. So we're organizing it according to the customer sales journey, from building intent to then transacting and then consuming on Azure. So we have incentives for both breadth, depth, enterprise, and CSP. I think our audience today is primarily focused on breadth engagement, but I wanted to cover a little bit of everything across the board, just so you have a sense of what Microsoft can offer. So the first campaign I want to draw you into is the workload acquisition and nurture campaign. So this is designed to support customer acquisition motions either with new customers or within your existing customer base. The program is designed for partners with either their Azure Expert MSP designation or an advanced specialization. So you would receive an invite to this program automatically if you have either of these via the Partner Center. But what the program is under this campaign, you could be eligible for up to 9K per customer per workload, depending on the project size. So you acquire a new customer, you get them migrated into Azure, and you'd be eligible for up to $9,000 per workload, depending on the size. I think it's relative. There's some scale aspect to it, but 9K is the cap per new workload. The second portion of that is the consumption portion. So what the workload acquisition nurture campaign also does is reward consumption efforts with your existing accounts. So if you have customers where they've then grown their consumption to greater than $3,000 on Azure a month, you'll be rewarded for that, and you'll be able to get a percentage of that consumption in the form of revenue incentive, right? So workload acquisition nurture campaign, again, for Azure Expert MSPs or advanced specialized partners, but a really great lever to really incentivize our partners to go capture new Azure business, but also grow Azure business once it's there, and focus on white space within your customers. The second one I want to draw your attention to is just, we talked about it a little bit earlier, I think in the slides, but just our breadth incentives around, digital partner of record consumption, CSP consumption, 4% for indirect resellers on core Azure. You have that 2% workload accelerator for data and AI. Azure reservations being 10%. This is also applying to the new savings plan for compute, if you've seen that new offering, but Azure reservations, savings plan for compute, get you 10% incentive on the consumption of those plans and reservations. So those are kind of inherent to most consumption in the breadth market. So again, you can stack those. You can go 4% and then 2% for the workload accelerator. The second one I want to draw your attention to is our MCI incentives. So these are for enterprise or self-service, direct billing type customers. These are known as just your PAL-based incentives, but what these allow you to do is also get rewarded for consumption if you have owner or contributor access on a customer's Azure subscription. So you can get 5% if you're the only partner associated with a customer subscription, with 1% additional for different workloads. You can find those in the partner guide, but that'll allow you 6% for the consumption under MCI. The second one, MCI Enterprise for specialized partners. This is combined with that first base rate. So now you'll have that 5%, and then you can get an additional 5% if you have a specialization and you're working within that customer's environment as owner or contributor. So this is just another reason why, as we get into this slide, we'll get into the AMP slides, more reason to start thinking about, what's your roadmap as an Azure partner to get solution designation and then start working towards an advanced specialization. Like when you look at all these programs, just generally the theme is you'll be rewarded and be adding more value to your customers when you have an Azure specialization associated with your partner ID. So that's generally what I wanted to cover here. Majid, did I miss anything or anything we wanted to call out?
Hey, Chris, no, you nailed it.
Okay, awesome. Let's go to the next one then. Let's get into AMP. So there's 4 sales levers / programs I wanted to talk about on today's call. The reason I kind of put sales levers / programs because I almost couldn't decide what we wanted to call them. But these are all field led right now by Microsoft within our small medium business channel. So that includes, working with great partners like Sherweb to go and bring these programs to end customers and support them in their Azure journey. Just to call out what each of them are, we have our AMP program, which is really our hero program associated with migration initiatives with customers. We have ESIF, we have Azure Credit Offer, and we have solution assessments. So these are all field led with the exception of AMP partner led, which I'll get into. It's going to be a super exciting offer for advanced specialized partners. But let's just get right into it and go to the next slide. Oh, let's go on back. Okay, cool. So Azure Migration and Modernization Program, which is AMP. So some of you on the call might have seen this before, some of you may have not. But AMP continues to be our hero offer for end customer migration initiatives across all markets, SMB, our bigger accounts, enterprises. This is really like the program that puts it all together from a Microsoft sales lever and incentive perspective for customers. What the AMP program is we basically took a bunch of these sales levers, which we're going to talk about today: professional services funding, technical skill building, like tools, assistance from Microsoft engineers, and packaged it together under one framework, which is, you can see there on the left, our cloud adoption framework and our well-architected framework on Azure. So all AMP engagements will be built on Microsoft best practices, but delivered via Microsoft partners. So the reason we're bringing AMP up is because once you have AMP designation, so you have to be either an advanced specialized partner, Azure Expert MSP, you then can apply to become an AMP eligible partner. What that will allow you to do is go deliver AMP engagements to your customers, and it'll be partially supported by Microsoft, either via the way of professional services funding, Azure credits, access to Microsoft Fast Track, for example. So being an AMP designated partner is a really big value add for you as a partner to then go to market and have that designation. We only have a handful of them in Canada, and even worldwide, there's not a huge amount of AMP eligible partners because you have to go through this skilling journey to get this designation. But once you have this, you'll be able to then go offer this to your customers. So what does this do for your customer? One, it kind of pre-packages an engagement model of how do we get a customer from dark on-premise into cloud. So we leverage best practices. We use like a pretty defined milestone framework, like getting landing zones set up, having a baseline security efforts in place, and then migration waves. So we have like a very defined approach of how AMP engagements go. The second portion of that is Microsoft provides professional services funding for AMP projects. So we're able to offset, you'll see it in later slides, but we're able to offset a large portion of what it's going to cost customers to migrate into Azure via professional services funding. And then they also get great things like expert help from you as a partner. They get in-depth assistance from Microsoft Fast Track engineers, and they get access to our enterprise skilling initiative, which is our platform for providing customers access to certification courses. So more details are available at aka.ms/AMP partner led to get more info, but let's just get a little bit deeper into some of the scenarios covered under AMP on the next slide. So AMP helps customers, we know, with migration and modernization scenarios, but what are these scenarios? Obviously, the big one in our market being infrastructure and database migrations. So you have your Windows Server, SQL Server, VMware to Azure. Those are primarily the big ones in SMB, but basically, how do we take customers from being on-prem into the cloud? So that'll be a big focus for AMP. One thing I want to call out with AMP is that we support, like the program is supporting on-prem to cloud. We don't support CSP to CSP or enterprise to CSP or direct to CSP. We're really focusing on how do we win and achieve migrations from customers that are not yet on cloud and get them into cloud. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through this. Second scenario, VDI deployments. So Azure Virtual Desktop kind of being the hero solution there. That's another supported scenario that you can leverage AMP for as an AMP partner. Third one, app and data modernization efforts. So, re-architecting customers' applications in Azure. That's something that'll be supported. And then SAP, migrating their SAP workloads into Azure, including SAP HANA. So let's go to the next one. So we have two flavors of AMP that are going to be relevant to you if you choose to go down the path of being an AMP partner. One of these is AMP field-led, and the second one is AMP partner-led. Both of them are delivered by you as an AMP partner, but the difference is how you are nominating an opportunity to get into AMP. So the field-led equivalent of AMP is like the full-scale AMP offer. So this one has, this one includes like, the Azure credits, as you can see there, access to fast track, enterprise skilling, the partner funding of 20% of the yearly ACR, which is Azure consumed revenue. And this one would be nominated through Microsoft. So this is a collaborative effort between someone like myself, working with Sherweb, and working on a certain opportunity that we feel should then be nominated to AMP through our field-led program. So when you see field-led versus partner-led, it just means, is Microsoft involved as part of the nomination process? In this one, I would be the one to nominate end customer and opportunity into the AMP program, and then it'll fall in some of these project sizes. So you'll see there we have assess and plan, and then we have migrate and modernize. Right now with SMB market, we're only, in Canada at least, we're only supporting migrate and modernize efforts, but this may change over time. And then the opportunity will either fall into the standard offer, which is the 1 year projection of the customer's Azure consumed revenue is between 25 and 100K. If it's over 100K, it'll fall in the advanced offer. And you'll see there the big difference is just attaching fast track to it, as well as ability to get more funding and more credits depending on the project size. So let's just go to the next one. So this is one I'm super excited about, and I think it's another reason to really start pursuing AMP designation if you haven't already, is AMP partner-led. So AMP partner-led, what's really exciting about it is that it's taking Microsoft a little bit out of the equation in order to get nominations for Azure customers. So basically with AMP partner-led, you as an AMP partner can self-nominate an opportunity through the MCI portal, and then you're getting faster approvals from when you nominate an opportunity, when it's approved, and when you can begin the work. So the engagement is fully led by you as a partner. And how we're doing this and how we're able to scale AMP partner-led is the fact that engagements are going to fall in what we're calling t-shirt sizes. So small, medium, large sized Azure engagements. The opportunity will fall into one of those. You'll be able to go in, nominate your opportunity, say I have a medium-sized engagement, which will have automatically fixed amount of funding that it can provide, an amount of access to different resources that it's going to give you. It'll all be done in the MCI portal, and you won't need to engage Microsoft directly to get funding, essentially, to begin your project. I just want to call out that right now, AMP partner-led is only available for managed Microsoft customers, so enterprise and corporate. But I will say that we do have confirmation that it's going to be available for SMB in the near future. So stay tuned. And this is just more reason to start working towards that designation. So in the next slide, I'll get into what that looks like. So these are the, again, same supported engagements, but these are the offer sizes that you can look for AMP partner-led. So you're going to see small, medium, large. So under small, 25K to 125K, medium, 125K to 250, and large being 250 to 500. And then you'll get fixed payment sizes based on your project. So the payments can then be used for professional services funding. So, you have a customer, they're migrating into Azure. You anticipate they're going to spend about 50K a year on Azure. You'll be able to go request AMP partner-led funding, and you'll get 15K so that the customer can then offset the cost of the migration into Azure. And then just they don't have to worry about, what are the additional costs of me going on-prem into cloud. So it's a huge value add to give them an AMP engagement. And then you will have access to the same things like enterprise skilling and fast track as well, which is optional. You can get Microsoft engineering to also be part of the project and just give it some oversight from start to completion. So I think that covers this slide. Let's go to the next one. So now I just want to quickly talk about some of the three sales levers that I, as a channel seller, can apply to some of our top opportunities. In Canada, what we define as a top end SMB deal or strategic opportunity would be about 5K on Azure per month. So not all deals will apply for these three sales levers, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what they are, just so it's clear when you hear these terms in the market, or you understand what Microsoft can bring to the table. when it comes to supporting top deals. So these are all field led. These are things that somebody like myself or an Azure specialist will be able to bring to some of our deals. But I just wanted to give you awareness as a partner what we can do. One of them is ESIF. So it's our end customer investment fund, similar to AMP, but this is not an AMP engagement. It's funding of professional services delivered by approved partners to drive deployment or migration of Microsoft solutions. We have ESIF for modern work, there's ESIF for Dynamics, but it's just generally a bucket of funding that Microsoft can allocate to professional services engagements. This number for Azure is 10%. So again, whatever the first year projection is, the customer is going to be spending $50,000 on Azure, they'll get $5,000 in professional services funding. Well, the partner gets $5,000 in professional services funding to then apply to the engagement with the customer. In our space, in the SMB space, same thing as the next two you're going to see. It's a collaborative process between your indirect provider and Microsoft. So talk to Sherweb, see if you feel you have an opportunity that's eligible for this program, is the guidance that we can give you. But basically, at a high level, you have an opportunity. There's a migration statement of work that you fill out. It goes over to Microsoft. I nominate it, and then once it's approved, the professional services work can begin. And then we just continually get updates on progress until the migration is completed. So that's ESIF in a nutshell. Just go to the next slide. And sorry, I'm just kind of going through these relatively quickly because I want to leave some time for Q&A. So let's just go back to Azure Credit Offer. Can we just go, I'm seeing solution assessment. Okay, cool. So ACO, Azure Credit Offer, this is also, again, part of AMP, but it can be kind of taken and done separately in our CSP market. It is now available in CSP in Canada as of August 2022. Basically, we're providing Azure credits for customers migrating into Azure based, again, on that 12-month spend. So where ESIF, you can think of ESIF as for the professional services aspect of you as the delivery partner who's going to be helping them migrate. Azure Credit Offer is helping them offset some of the costs of moving into Azure. So it provides up to 10% of that projected yearly spend in the way of Azure credits applied to their partner billing account. Where we don't use ESIF, like just our ACO, just at a high level, we don't use ACO as a counter to, hey, this solution is too expensive. We use it as another incentive for a customer to act now when it comes to migration, because maybe they have some costs associated with then moving from on-prem into Azure. They have contracts that have to expire of on-prem data centers, or there's just generally there's going to be some costs in the first couple months to get them onboarded. That's where it would be a great use for us to use ACO, not as hey, this solution is too expensive, I'd like to reduce the cost, because it's only for that first 12 months on Azure. After that, it no longer applies. So that's ACO in a nutshell. I'll just go to the last one, solution assessments as a service. So this is something we now have a team locally in Canada that does for SMB. Again, it's for top end or strategic deals where we feel, okay, this is going to be a fairly sizable opportunity. But we have a team in-house that can go and work with the end customer and you as a partner to deploy either Block 64 or Mover or a similar tool onto their on-prem environment. And it basically spits out a huge Power BI report with a ton of information in it. It takes stock of what they have on-prem, what the equivalent would look like in Azure. It'll give them some ballpark figures of what costing would look like, and they can play around with, as you can see on the screen here, what it'll look like with reserved instances. What if we right-size the environment? What if it's a dev test environment? We want to play around with how long servers are running. It'll talk a little bit about sustainability, obviously Azure being one of the most sustainable clouds. So they can kind of piggyback off the investments Microsoft has made into our sustainability, so they can start to reflect that as in their reporting. And then security vulnerabilities and what they have on stock right now, and if it's either out of support or if we're can detect any vulnerabilities in the on-prem environment. And this report, basically, I think it's 12 pages or something like that, but it's super valuable for on-prem customers to understand what they have in their environment and then build a real roadmap and business case into moving to cloud. So this is available for CSP customers as well. And this team is exclusively focused just on delivering these engagements and then backing off. And then you as a partner can then finish the engagement with them and leverage that report to go out and seal the deal on the migration. So ESIF, ACO, solution assessments are something I can help bring to the table. Other Microsoft sellers can help bring to the table. But again, it's a collaborative process with Sherweb. So talk to Sherweb if you feel you have an opportunity that is eligible for this, and then we'll be able to have a dialogue around what we'd be able to apply to your deal. Because it might be different in different markets. But those are the three. And then AMP, work to get those designations. I want to see everybody hopefully have some kind of plan to get that designation, because AMP partner-led is going to get you much faster access to funding, and it's going to be a huge value add to your customers. So I think that covers everything I wanted to cover today.
Thank you, Chris. So before I pass the baton to Alex, who's gonna speak about the closing statement, I just want to mention one thing. So throughout the presentation, we kept mentioning Canada. We mentioned it a couple of times, but just want to emphasize the fact that many of these programs are also open to our U.S. clients. So your best bet is just to reach out to us directly, reach out to Sherweb, engage with your account manager, and we'll be able to advise you if you're qualified for this program or not. So Alex, I will pass it on to you.
Yeah, it's just a real little recap as to what the Sherweb advantage is for the upcoming year. So as most of you saw and heard, like the amazing presentation from Chris that shed a very bright light on all of these obscure Microsoft programs that some of us had heard of, maybe just the acronyms here and there. So I want to first thank Chris for going in detail into all of them with very valuable information for our partners. And as he hinted, the idea is that you want to work with a partner on this. And that is part of the Sherweb advantage, that we have access to these programs. We know how these programs work. We know who to talk to at Microsoft, both Canada and the US, to get those programs moving. But one thing that I want to stress, because everyone gets excited very, very fast to see all the money that they could apply for, is you must go through the right steps. You must earn that solution designation. You must prove to Microsoft that you are able to hold your end of the opportunity. So you have to be able to have the staff on hand to take on the parts. Microsoft will definitely help. Sherweb will help as well. But it's not a thing of, I have this customer that would definitely benefit from getting $10,000-$20,000 credit for the first year on this. How do I apply? How do I get this? It's like, no, you have to go through the process of getting that solution designation, getting that advanced specialization, getting ESIF ready, getting AMP ready, and we can help you on that path to get to those places. And then afterwards, once you have those opportunities, we can help you get those customers nominated, either if it's AMP or for ESIF, or any of the new programs that Microsoft will come up with the strange new acronyms over the next course, over the next year. But that's it in a nutshell. So it really is focus on your own certifications, spruce up your knowledge and your points for the different Microsoft programs, because there is a lot of there's a lot of reward. There's a lot of there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of savings for your customers that you can get there. So it really is worth it. And we wanted to make sure that you were aware of all these programs today. So I believe now it's time for the Q&A. At least we're on that slide. I don't know if there were that many questions, or if Chris shone too bright of a light on the audience, and now they're feeling like a bit of deer in headlights, which we like to say in, in Canada. But again, like a great job, Chris, on that, because it really is, like, even for myself, like I knew a lot about these programs. I knew most of the acronyms, but just the way you explained, all the steps, all the details, which program applies to what, I just, amazing job.
Well, thank you. I know it's a ton of information. So, those links, aka.ms/AMP partner-led, and some of our incentives guide can help clarify. But let's get into some Q&A.
Perfect. So thanks, Alex. Thanks, Chris. So I'm just going to leave the chat open for a minute or two, so you could submit any questions that you might have for either for Sherweb or for our friends at Microsoft. And while you're submitting your questions, I just want to emphasize the fact that you could reach out to us. If you're not yet a partner, you could just log in to www.sherweb.com/partners to find out how to become a partner. or if you have any questions, whether it's whether it's related to this webinar or just in general, the numbers on the screen. So feel free to drop us a call. Yeah, so I'm just monitoring the chat. So there's no questions so far. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds, and if there's no questions, we're just going to wrap up.
I have one, but it's a bit of an Alex question. So if there is no answer to it, I understand. So I don't want to put you on the spot, Majid. I really don't. But I have a question. A partner that was silver or gold in cloud platform under the old program. Okay. So right now they're eligible for the Azure benefits, the Azure incentives we just talked about. If throughout the course of this year, the renewal, let's say the renewal is up in February, okay, and they have met the requirements for the modern work solutions designation, but not the infrastructure one, okay, and upon their renewal in February, they choose to opt for the new solutions designation program instead of taking the legacy silver benefits and whatnot. Would that then disqualify them from the Azure incentives since they're now on solution designation without infrastructure? Or is there something in the partner center, maybe hidden from view, that would still kind of say, no, they were a silver or golden cloud platform, so up until October, they're good?
Yeah, so that's a great question. As I understand it, so where it all starts is what our incentives year is. And so our incentives year, oddly enough, doesn't follow Microsoft's fiscal year. It doesn't follow the calendar year. It starts October 1st and ends September 30th of the following year. And so the way the assessments and everything work is as at October 1st, if when the program started, you either had the MCPP or the solution area designation, you're good for up until the next round that we do this. Now, I am fully anticipating that come October 1st, it will only be the MCPP program. And so that is at least how I understand it today.
Okay, so it really is like the check is done at the beginning of the fiscal year. So October 1st, were you a silver or golden cloud platform? Yes, check, you're good until October 2023.
Yeah, and then the way it's kind of been explained to us is that this incentives year is very much a dual model, right? So have one or the other, you're good until the next incentives year.
Okay, well, it's wonderful. Thank you for clarifying.
Welcome.
Perfect. So we have more questions in the chat. So I guess the information was pretty complete. Again, quick reminder: we'll be sending you the recording and the deck. So again, I want to thank our panelists. I want to thank those who attended, and until the next time we present something else, right? Until our next webinar.
Have a great holiday, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you, everyone, for the thorough information. And hope to hear from our partners very soon. So see you all, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.